time to get your fix. Come on down, get your horrible gaming review. 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 Wow.
Hello, my name is Zach Ryan with Old Man Gaming. Welcome back to another horrible game review. It's been a little bit since I've done this, guys. Just been super busy. It's been very hard for me to review games that I'm not just standardly playing. But I'm going to try and keep these coming out anytime I play something new to kind of give you guys what I'm playing and give you my thoughts on it. That being said, we got a couple of disclaimers. Number one, this is a snap judgment review. The horrible in the title of this content does not refer to the game or DLC that I am reviewing, but much more the actual review. I do 5 to 10 hours with these games tops usually, and I'm just trying to give you an idea whether or not you're going to enjoy the game right off the bat or not. Because of that, and the fact that I think most video games are the most subjective forms of art, I am not going to be giving a score for this review. Instead, I will be telling you the overview of what the game is. I will be giving you the pros and the cons of the game in my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'll be telling you whether I personally will be sticking with this game outside the purposes of this video. So, disclaimers out of the way. Very excited about this one today. This was kind of an impulse play, and that is Hardspace Shipbreaker. Just dropped into Game Pass. So, yeah, this game was... I don't know. I was just trying this game on a whim, and it's a very interesting thing. So let's get into it. Number one, this game is first person, and it's kind of a simulation. I mean, as simulatory as a sci-fi game can be. You play a shipbreaker, somebody who basically works for this giant galactic corporation, and you have been lured into this corporate scheme where basically they kill you, but they save your genetic code so that they can keep cloning you with all your memories if you die, and then they put you up on a space station in space. And basically old spaceships, you are set to demolish them. You kind of play this cosmic scrapper, pulling apart the ships with different tools, most of much being a light grappler, which allows you to pull different pieces of things, and a cutter, which allows you to cut both precise structural areas as well as just huge chunks of aluminum apart. Then the trick is cutting them in a way so that you can kind of sift through them. There might be a fourth one, but for right now there's just the three, and that is furnace, processor, and barge. Furnace is for all your aluminums and your metals. Processor is for all the nanocarbon machines, and then barge is for any usable items that can be refashioned to a new ship, like chairs, consoles, airlock controls, lights, stuff like that. And then with that, the loop of the game is very simple. You spend a day in your hab, kind of progressing the story, while also upgrading your equipment to then go back to a shift of work. You get after the tutorial completes, you get 15 minutes to go through a shift at work, and then you have to go to sleep and come back the next day. The idea being you have to constantly keep making more money to slowly chip off the debt that you incur from being cloned in the first place. Yes, that's right. The company you're working for incurs all of that on a debt onto you, with the premise that you're going to be making so much money you'll easily get out of debt, which quickly detecting is not the truth. Then you just start basically taking it almost like a puzzle. You have to kind of look at the ship, pull apart the pieces, put them in the right places, make precise cuts, but there are plenty of dangers abound. There are explosive components inside the ship that if you hit them or trigger them, they blow up and kill you. If you overuse your weapons, they will start on fire and kill you. There is also a reactor pull where you get a ton of money for pulling it successfully, but basically it goes nuclear if you don't pull it fast enough. So it's very interesting. It kind of presents this like it's a very interesting way of presenting, almost like a puzzle. Like, I would almost call this a puzzle game, because it's like, how do you do this? However you want to do this is how you go about it. And I thought that was a very interesting way to do it. As you go through, you will get more tools to make things easier, to make things also trickier, and you will also unlock more certifications as you rank up, as you get more money, as you break down more ships, which allow you to break down bigger and scarier ships with much more dangers inside to destroy you, kill you. And remember, every time you die, it costs, you know, like $1 million to regenerate you, which you incur that. What's also interesting here is you have to manage your oxygen, your thruster fuel, because you're floating in space, your suit structural integrity, and your health. All of these things cost thousands of dollars to replace. So you need to work as fast as humanly possible so that you're making more than you're spending in air. And that is it. That's this game. As the game progresses, you get little tidbits of stories. There are some other characters that you get to, you know, interact with. I'm not far in, as per se usual with this sort of thing, so I'm still interacting with a character named Lou, who's talking about unionizing, which I am assuming is not going to go well. But again, I haven't gotten far enough into it. Your main point of contact is this guy named Weaver, who used to be a cutter, who works for the company and puts the rookies through their tests. And while Weaver seems very friendly, I have a lot of suspicions about Weaver as to whether he's really there for you or not. But this game does, and then the whole thing is scored by like this really interesting banjo music in the background, kind of giving you that like impoverished worker feel, even though it's a sci-fi space drama. That's the game, guys. That is the game in itself. It's a very simple premise, but is it good? Let's get into the meat, the pros and cons. The number one pro for me might be a personal pro. There is something about this game, something about this work that gives you that feeling of an adult coloring book, like that perfect, like, keep it in the lines, color the things you haven't had. There's just something so satisfying about that. It is the same thing I got from Lawnmower Simulator, not gonna lie. That just like absolute perfection of like watching the grass get cut and seeing the work that you've done and the work that still has to be done. And that for me was like the winner for this. Like, this is one of those that I could just play for hours because it's just so satisfying, so peaceful, and just so interesting to me. My next pro is the music. Originally, it was going to be a con because it's very simple and there's not a lot to it, and it's very repetitive. But at the same time, there's something about it that kind of gets in you. And the music is never... There's no harsh overtones that get repeated too much to the point where you're sick of it, like a boss music in a platformer or something. With this, it's just this nice banjo country style soundtrack over it, and it just adds to the ambiance of the game so well that it was just great. It was just great. I never thought about turning it off and putting out my own music. Never. I just love it in the background, and it just gives me that feel of like, yeah, I'm just gonna work on this ship. It's gonna be great. My next pro, it's hard for me to give pros on this because they're very intangible, so I'm going to do the best I can. But my next pro is the approach to breaking these ships down is infinite. It is a sandbox, and I love that. I love when a game gives you a problem with multiple solutions, or just gives you the tools to potentially accomplish that problem any way you want. And there's so many interesting ways to go into the ship thing. That you could start to take the chunks off the outside and work your way in. Personally, I like to cut out the glass of the front cockpit, move in, and then there's these little yellow blocks that you can disintegrate that are... It's all marked with the yellow. They're basically like joints that if you sever them all, the ship will start to come apart in that section. So I like to get in there and just pull those apart and pull out all the barge stuff and then rip it apart. But you could easily do it a different way. Going through the airlock, you could go with the aluminum cutter on the outside. And the coolness of like it sneaking in these like explosive like hydrogen barrels and like stuff where like you can very easily cut into something and just blow yourself up. I think it's really cool how that works. And I know that's a very vague pro, but it's very hard for me to define the pros of this game. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the way that the problem solving comes at you, and the fact that you just have to look at this Rubik's Cube of a box of steel and find a way to pull it into all its necessary pieces. My next pro is the physics of this game, and while you're going to find them irritating at points, there is something wonderful about the way they work. When an explosion happens, it actually fragments the ship into pieces, making it even harder to collect it because you can't collect big chunks to just put them in the place that it needs to be. You have to collect each little chunk. You also have this overall tier at the top of your screen that as you pull the ship apart, you get more bonuses for pulling more percentages of the ship apart. But interestingly enough, you put the wrong thing in the wrong thing, or you destroy things by accident with the cutter or explosions, whatever, you'll start to get red from the other side, which will slowly lock off the tiers. So you have to really balance out, like, is it worth getting that little piece of something, or can I just send that in with the rest of it because it's worth it just to get it done and fast. I really enjoyed that, and the physics. I didn't like Outer Wilds because it was a very much like that where you float around in space, but the floating around in space was just so hard to control. With this, I feel like the controls are very intuitive, and the biggest concern I had going into it was, I guess this is a new pro, controls. Was kind of going to wrap it into physics, but I guess it's controls. It's so intuitive in the fact that, like, you still get that feeling of floating, and there's also all sorts of moments where you try to drag a piece that's too big, it drags you, or you end up flipping or bouncing off things, and it's just very interesting to try and manage your movement while managing the larger pieces. And figuring out how to do that. And as you play more, it does come with practice, whereas I felt like with Outer Wilds, it wasn't coming with practice. It was just getting more and more confused and lost. The controls are just so intuitive with the 3D flying. I feel like if a game like Outer Wilds or one of the other games that I have been more negative on with the 3D space stuff were to adopt these controls, it would be much better. I really enjoyed these controls. All right, let's move into the cons. My first con has got to be the distance you have to travel to repurchase your oxygen, fuel, and whatever. And I kind of understand why they did this, okay? So this is a con with a caveat, I guess. But when you start working on a ship, you have this huge space between your habitat, which is just this kind of floating house in space, and the ship itself. The only place to buy the things you need, though, are back at this kiosk in front of your house, and it's pretty far away. So you have to kind of like really time yourself. If you're in a ship and you get the low oxygen message, it's too late to get back. You're going to bounce off too many things and never make it back, which is a little irritating. I found a little irritating there. Plus, it takes huge chunks away from the just pulling the ship apart sort of feel. Again, I understand why they did it. They want you to really think about what you're doing with your management of oxygen and fuel thruster stuff. They really want you to think about that. But at the same time, that whole space between there and the kiosk is just so irritating. It's just this huge absence of anything. Plus, you get roughly, basically like an hour is a minute in this, so you get about 15 minutes with the show, with the actual work with your shift before it just cuts you off and sends you back, which we'll get to in a second. So like, if I have to go buy oxygen twice during a day, which usually you do, unless you find these little oxygen containers in the ship, which is nice, you have to then like, you have to spend 2 hours, 2 minutes of that 15 minutes just traveling back to the habitat and traveling back to the ship. That's really irritating. That takes away from it a little bit. My next con is the shift. And again, this is a con with a caveat. I understand why they did that, because that's where the challenge lies, is trying to break this thing down and get it, and like trying to break this thing down in an amount of time where you make enough money to clear more debt, just based on how much you're going to be spending. That being said, though, like, why can't I work overtime? Why can't I work a couple hours of overtime? There should be some sort of like system for that. You know, if I'm in real life and I don't get a job done in a day, I'm staying extra to do it. Even if I don't get it done, I'm going to work on it a little bit more. There's no option to work overtime or go in early or anything like that. I kind of understand, again, why, because that's how this game works. But, man, I'll just be in this really good zone and pulling the ship apart, and then all of a sudden I'm forced to go back to the habitat, forced to enjoy this, do the story. And the story is all enjoyable. The sleeping's all enjoyable. The unlocks is all enjoyable. But I just want to work on the ship. I just want to work on the ship. And that kind of takes away from it a little bit for me, which was a little bit irritating. When I do lawn mowing simulator, I have an amount of time to complete the lawn. Every second over, it deducts pay, or it deducts like bonus from it. So that brings us to the end. Whether or not I'm going to stick with this, I actually think I am. I'm enjoying this game. I streamed it the other day. It was really enjoyable, pleasant stream where I could talk to people while I'm doing it. Again, the timer isn't my favorite thing. And the traveling to the kiosk isn't my favorite thing, but I also see the reasons they are in the game. So I kind of have to give that to them. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with this. This is very enjoyable. Like I said, it's like adult coloring. It is a good, relaxing experience while also having enough heart-pumping moments to still be entertaining. That's one thing that Lawn Mowing Simulator doesn't have. There's no like moments of pure tension, which on the most part you don't want that. But every once in a while, I'd like something exciting to happen. With this, it does. Every once in a while, you'll hit something and it'll start on fire or explode in your face. You'll lose money and you'll die. Or you'll have to get out of there in time to not die. Stuff like that's really interesting, and I like that. I like the puzzle solving here. So yeah, I'm going to stick with it. Hope that helps you guys. Hope you enjoyed this review. Of course, you can contact us on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord. Links in the description below. You can influence us in all of our shows from there. I do want to say this is coming out on a Saturday. Right now I'm doing dev diaries for my game company as we are set to release our wrestling role-playing game. Please check that out at Axiom Games. But because of that, me doing that on a Monday, I probably won't be doing any more reviews on Monday, but I will be doing the reviews and releasing them when I can, such as Saturday, or if I'm not don't have anything going out on Tuesday or Friday or something, I'll put them up then. So the reviews are going to kind of come whenever they come. Okay? So, as usual, you guys keep watching and listening. We'll keep making them. See you guys next time.